Picture this. You're running one of the world's most historic navies, but the money? Well, it's drying up fast. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive right into the incredibly turbulent shifts in the Royal Navy's procurement strategy between 2024 and 2026. Honestly, it's a fascinating, highly consequential couple of years that completely reshaped the fleet. Right off the bat, we have to ask, how do you actually modernize a massive navy when the cash just isn't there? What we're seeing here is a dramatic tug of war between super ambitious defense plans on one side and harsh, undeniable financial realities on the other. I mean, ships are insanely expensive to maintain, let alone build from scratch. So when the budget tightens, leadership is forced into making incredibly tough and, frankly, highly controversial decisions. Section 1. The Strategic Defense Review. Let's take a quick look at the timeline and the early steps. To really grasp how the Navy's strategy got flipped on its head, you've got to look at this rapid sequence of events. The whole thing kicked off in July 2024, when the newly elected Labor government launched a Strategic Defense Review. The goal? Figure out what the military actually needed versus what it could actually afford. And they didn't just drop a massive report all at once. It was rolled out in phases over about 2 years, leading up to the Major Defense Investment Plan in June 2026. But as you'll see, the moves they made in late 2024 gave everyone a massive clue about the financial pressure cooker they were operating in.
Which brings us to Section 2, Early Retirements and Scaling Back the Legacy Fleet.
So, the very first thing to come out of this review wasn't some flashy announcement about new ships. Nope, it was a swift, brutal scaling back of older vessels. By November 2024, they announced some major early retirements. We're talking the end of the line for the Albion-class assault ships, one of their frigates, and 2 Wave-class replenishment vessels from the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. The big takeaway here is the sheer speed of this. These ships had to be retired by March 2025. It's a clear signal that the budget was so tight they needed immediate, sweeping cuts just months into the review process.
That leads us directly to Section 3, the 2026 funding clash and its massive political fallout.
This aggressive cost-cutting set the stage for a gigantic political showdown over the budget. Things hit an absolute boiling point in the summer of 2026. John Healey, the defense secretary, who had literally been overseeing this entire review, stepped down on June 11th. And he didn't mince words. He made it very clear he was quitting because the government was failing to adequately fund defense. And it wasn't just him. Armed Forces Minister Al Carnes resigned right alongside him. Having a leadership vacuum like that right before the final defense investment plan drops just goes to show you how completely toxic those internal battles over money had become.
Moving to Section 4, Submarines and Drones. This is where the total pivot happens.
After all that political drama, the final defense investment plan in late June 2026 forced a complete 180 in how the Royal Navy plans to fight. The old blueprints basically tossed overboard. Just look at the contrast here. Back in 2020, they had this grand vision: build 5 brand new Type 32 frigates and expand the surface fleet to 24 ships by the mid-2030s. Fast forward to 2026, and that entire plan is completely dead. The Type 32, canceled. The expansion, abandoned. Instead, they took a hard pivot toward asymmetrical warfare, specifically future drone vessels. It is a massive paradigm shift from traditional, heavy surface combatants to uncrewed, autonomous systems.
Now, that doesn't mean they stopped building everything. If you look at the heavy manufacturing underway as of September 2025, some critical platforms were still moving forward. They were wrapping up the final Astute-class submarine and building 3 of the 4 massive Dreadnought-class ballistic missile subs, which is absolutely crucial for preserving the nuclear deterrent. On the surface, even though the Type 32 got axed, they were still actively building 5 Type 26 and 3 Type 31 frigates, so the core modernization survived, even while the grand expansion plans got completely gutted.
And then there's this number, 12. This represents the bedrock of the Navy's future strategy beneath the waves. Embedded in those initial 2025 recommendations was an official commitment to grow the fleet submarine force to up to 12 boats by the late 2030s. So while surface ships and assault vessels were facing the chopping block left and right, the silent service was actually singled out as a critical area for major growth. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. We know funding absolutely dictated this massive pivot, causing cabinet resignations and canceled ship classes. But by trading grand surface fleet ambitions for a leaner mix of submarines and high-tech drones, is the Royal Navy actually getting weaker? Or is a smaller, highly automated fleet perfectly adapted for tomorrow's conflicts? It's a huge debate, and one that's going to define naval strategy for decades to come. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring and keep questioning the deeper story behind the headlines.